I would like to start with Gilles. So give me a sense of what you've been dealing with over the past week or so with Turkey and Syria. One of the big questions have been is how do you coordinate on the ground? What have the logistics been like? And then the criticism is that not enough aid moved in quickly enough to those areas. And I know that it's tough, it takes time, but give me a snapshot of what's going on.
Yes, good afternoon. A snapshot is that, of course, in Syria, we have been active for the past 12 years with hundreds of colleagues working on the ground, and they have been able immediately with the Syrian Arab Red Crescent to provide medical assistance Monday a week ago to the hospital of Aleppo, to provide mattresses, blankets, and things that are necessary for people not to freeze, and to provide them with hygiene kits, with non-food items, food.
You were able to get into Aleppo, though,
immediately,
no problem.
We were there.
Through government, or you were there already? Because
we were there already.
So you were able to deploy.
Unfortunately, over 12 years that we have been working throughout, in Syria because of the armed conflict.
Yeah.
And we have been trying to maintain essential services up and running. And as you know, half of the population has been displaced, sometimes many times. Now, some of them again lost their homes. Shelter is of the essence. And in addition to that, we have been trying to maintain water systems. Half of the water's provision does not work properly, and we had a cholera outbreak last December. We are really worried that this might come back again if we are not able to provide proper water, and we continue to do our utmost, first to do water trucking as emergency, but also to restore essential public services like water provision.
And just on that note, and I think it's important for us to understand, because I think it's on top of all of our, we've seen the images on television, we see what people are going through. Do you feel that enough went to Aleppo and northwestern Syria? I mean, is it a dire situation that we're looking at right now?
No, as you say, it's basically it's nothing short of a humanitarian catastrophe.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have huge needs which are unmet. I know that also from the United Arab Emirates, immediately some aid has been shifted, and it's much needed. I think that we need to ensure that aid is able to reach those in needs everywhere throughout Syria.
And equally so, right?
And equally so to those who have the highest needs. And I think it's a time where impartial humanitarian assistance must not be politicized, it must not be instrumentalized. People deserve to be assisted, and we are working on that with all other organizations to make sure that as soon as possible everyone is able to receive the aid they need.
Thank you for that. Your Excellency Al Junaibi, I know that the UAE has been instrumental in assisting and deploying.
That's right.
And it's been incredible. I was also at Dubai Humanitarian City. I saw Dr. Dina there as well. I see how you're assisting global institutions to dispatch from here.
Yes, if we are talking about Syria and Turkey,
yeah.
Until yesterday numbers, there was 17 aircraft that move goods to Syria and 27 crafts that moves goods to Turkey. The numbers doesn't match because of the traffic in the airport. But about the metric tons, there is 858 metric tons have moved over those aircraft. I've been myself on the ground in Syria. I've been myself on the ground in Turkey. The situation is really very difficult. We need more efforts from everyone else.
I can only imagine the experience of being there and seeing, what people are going through. I'm going to ask you this because I think it's something that people are worried about. And frankly, it speaks to our topic of, can we achieve economic philanthropy? Does politics get in the way of being able to do your work?
I have been asked the same question when I arrived in Syria. That was from one of the gentlemen who work, I think, for Syrian TV. He asked me, how can this situation help with the politic situation in Syria? And my answer was like, I'm here to do my job, human first. And what we are doing is to get to as many people as we can, nothing to do with our organizations or what we do with the political situation. But we need.
Yeah, you need, because then if you need to deploy goods, you need.
True. I agree with you, but in our job, we don't put borders for ourselves and say this is a political situation or something, this country. We don't look at that side. What we do is we look how to get over those borders and reach everyone.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. Your Excellency Sharif, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Fantastic pink.
Yes.
You got the memo.
Bring the color to the room, yeah?
You know, you with UN Habitat, and you focus on urban planning, you focus on cities, you focus on how to build resilient cities. And here's an example, right? And let's use what we saw with this earthquake as a microcosm of what cities and, you know, we need to think about when we're building. What is your take on what's just transpired? And, you know, how, for example, earthquake-ridden areas and other areas that have been devastated, whether it's Pakistan with floods or other disasters, need to be thinking about rebuilding and how to do so.
Thank you so much for this and having me here. First of all, I would like to say my sympathy and condolences to the family who are affected by the earthquake in Turkey and also in Syria and also in any other natural disasters, for example, like Pakistan, Mozambique, and all that. Our team is in Syria, and we are doing some looking into the assessment, damage assessment, and how, as you said, how to rebuild, to the rebuilding of the cities, because most of the areas that is affected either is a man-made or even by natural disaster, they happen in cities. We, UN Habitat, we are dealing with human settlement, and also working with cities, and we are the custodian of SDG 11 to make cities sustainable, to make cities resilient. One of the areas that I would like to share with you is that in one of our strategic plan, we are looking into the, not only looking now at the assessment, the damage assessment, but how to rebuild. If we have the opportunity to rebuild the cities together with the government, together with the people, more resilient building, maybe more resilient to earthquake, more resilient to floods. And we are looking into the guidelines. We are providing the guidelines, providing the tools of resilient building. What do you mean by green building? What do you mean by resilient building? What are the criteria? How can you do it? That is our work. In coming out with the guidelines, coming out with the, we call it normative work in UN Habitat. So this is very important. We have tested it. We have worked in Iraq. We have worked in Mozambique. We have also worked in Pakistan, in other part of the world. And we would like to bring this, I would say, better practices.
But does it cost more per square meter to build in a resilient and sustainable way than the normal building practices that we've become accustomed to?
Yes, that is what are the perception. Yes. But I think if we can cause the externalities in the long term, that's why I think that is very important when you talk about the economic scale, the scalability, also the importance of working together with the private sector, with the philanthropists, as you said just now, so that we can have the economies of scale, and also we should convince the decision maker that the long-term benefit of investing now. I think this is very, very important. I think last time people always say that if you use solar panel, it will be more expensive. But now I think most of the houses having the solar panel.
It pays off right after a certain time.
Yes.
Really interesting. Lots to get into. Gilles, I want to bring you in here. According to a Citibank report, it was 2021, the stock of philanthropy equates to just under 3% of global GDP. I was sorely disappointed when I read this number. I mean, there are so many resources globally that could be mobilized, and absolutely not enough is being done. Do you find yourselves in a position where resources are drying up in certain ways? When economies go down, you find that people pull back? Is that your reality? And where are you right now?
Well, there is a growing gap between the needs that have been growing at, unfortunately, a very fast pace for humanitarian assistance and the resources available. And I want to go back to philanthropy. Actually, philanthropy is essential. Without philanthropy, I wouldn't be here. And actually, our international movement of the Red Cross and Red Crescent was born out of philanthropists. We will turn 160 years this Friday. And 160 years ago, it is an entrepreneur, Henri Dunant, who had this idea of establishing what is today the largest humanitarian network on earth, and he mobilized philanthropists and monarchs of the time. First, to have the resources, but also the idea, the innovation, and the first Geneva Convention, which came into being. And I think today we need a kind of a second round where really we mobilize what you mentioned, this potential for greater philanthropic engagement, because what we have seen over the past 12 years is protracted armed conflicts not being resolved, and ever more of them. Yeah. Then we have seen the COVID-19 pandemic with a lot of knock-on effects socially and economically. Then the Ukraine conflict, which is taking a huge toll also with inflation and prices of food, etc. And on top of that, now we have this earthquake. So I think the situation that we described about the most vulnerable in North Syria really epitomizes this gap between growing needs and a lack of resources to really mobilize. But I think, if I may conclude on that point, philanthropy is not just about resources. Yeah. Bringing philanthropists with us is a game changer. Often with philanthropists, we have a novel approach to trying to do things in a multi-stakeholder manner, which forces all of us to rethink the way we approach our assistance and make it much more efficient, much more effective. So I really, I think your call is absolutely well taken.
Look, I wonder, this is the stuff that keeps me up at night. We've had multiple disasters, tragedies that are playing out simultaneously, right, that require an enormous amount of aid to be mobilized. I worry that sometimes you've got to say, look, what are our priority areas? We can't send here because we need to urgently send there. Do you have to sometimes make those tough decisions?
Well, we see that the situation becomes very tense in terms of resources nowadays. And we see this growing gap, even in the UN, of course, can speak a lot about this, with a growing gap of unmet needs based on the appeals. And we think that, we might, if nothing changes, we might be forced this year to do very tough choices on diminishing our ambitions and our capacity to respond because of a lack of needs. So we do our utmost to avert this. Maybe just to give you one example, we feel and could understand some of the aid fatigue. But at the same time, if you take one example is in Goma, Eastern DRC, we see 330,000 people coming, especially displaced people, and we need to insert them in the water provision system and wastewater treatment system. Instead of just us, the Red Cross, doing our humanitarian work of providing a water trucking or so, we have teamed up with the municipality, with private companies, but also with the World Bank, in order to have a 40 million plan to really develop the water management system throughout the city. We know the place, we know the water board, the municipality, and together we can really go at scale. And I think with regard to sprouting cities, it is key that we, even in the emergency, plan long-term and try to find durable solutions.
A lot of what you said has actually scared me, right? Because when you say you have to make tough decisions, it makes me really worry about more tragedies striking simultaneously. Your Excellency Al Junaibi, it's been really illuminating. I moved here about a year and a half ago, and I've seen this region is really taking it on to be a hub for the UN and World Health Organization and other organizations as well. And the philanthropy question has really been sort of become part of the ethos, specifically of the UAE. Could you speak to that and what role you'll be playing?
Actually, it is an excellent question, but what I really wanted before the time is up, I wanted to mention something that the gentleman he was here talking about.
Yeah.
That the UAE have been doing what he's saying for more than 20 years. If we talk about empowering the in-need people, that's what we are doing. And there is the mother of the UAE have created a fund for the refugees ladies that will help them do their own job, farming or creating jobs for them. Even she have been doing schools for them to teach them some of the things that will help them go through their life.
Yeah.
If you go through the UAE Red Crescent app, you will find all of what we are talking about there. If you go to farming, if you go to teaching them fishing or even I don't know the name in English. شو هو الحرف اليدوية? Crafting.
Oh, crafting. Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, everyone answered. I just want to see if everyone is still awake.
Brilliant. I want to talk about funding as well. And firstly, I'm excited there's a Red Crescent app. I should know this. I don't. I'm going to download it. I'll be
Please
supporting. I want to talk about funding very quickly, and I think we can maybe talk about funding and where to from here. It's urgent, right? We need it. Your Excellency Al Junaibi, what is the status of funding and assistance, and how's the bank doing? How's your piggy bank doing?
Sorry, you mean funding?
Yeah, funding and assistance, right? Aid. So monetary assistance, so that you can continue what you're doing.
We are funded by so many what they call them banks in the UAE. They are helping with that. There is
but money's increasing, not decreasing.
It is increasing, yes.
Good.
Yes.
That's very encouraging.
Yes.
Fantastic. Your Excellency Sharif, I lots to talk about in terms of funding and what you need. Tell us what you need, and whether you're sitting in a situation where you're worried about allocation of resources to be able to do what you do. And what are your priority areas right now?
Yeah, that is a very, very critical question.
Yes.
You know that UN Habitat, UN is a member state, created by member state.
Yes.
I was a former mayor before in Malaysia, that when you have a program, then you have to look for your money and from the people through taxes, throughout that. But we are funded by the member state. But as you say, that every country have their own challenges. So in terms of the funding is now decreasing. And you have to prioritize. And at the same time, we also have to be innovative. For example, like in UN Habitat, apart from working with the government, with the member state, from the voluntary contribution or the project, or we call it earmark project, we also work with the private sector. We work with the philanthropies. We also work together with the community. So I think what we would like here is that we have the program, but we need more help in terms of not only capital, but it's also in terms of leadership.
How do you prioritize on disaster
Leadership.
management?
Sorry?
How do you prioritize which disaster to really put full efforts into?
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah, it's tough. Yes, it's tough. But that doesn't mean that we step back. We still have to move. We still have to look at more innovative way. We work together with the private sector, and we work also together with the community. At the same time, I think we work very much with the local government, because it's where the action is taken place. For example, with Dubai municipalities, we are the local government, with the mayors, with the governors on the ground. And also sometimes money is one, or funding is one of the problems. Sometimes there are also cases we have funding, but we need leadership at the ground to work together with us to implement the program that we think is good for the people. Leadership. Second, we need the governance. Sometimes we have the funding, but do we have the ready governance to have the enabling factor, enabling environment for us to invest?
Yeah.
But the third is, of course, is the capital. Capital, it can be in human resource, who are working together with us, and also capital in terms of USD or dollar. So I think we need to look this in more integrated way. We cannot just look it into a separate. You need to do integrated.
I have a personal question very quickly for each of you. I always wonder what humanitarians think about before they go to bed.
We don't go to bed. We are working.
Gilles.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Well, I think humanitarians are really committed throughout the day and night, and I think it's also important that humanitarians have a moment before going to bed to recharge, because if you want to give a lot, you need sometimes to recharge.
You need to sleep, sir. It sounds to recharge.
That said, one issue, of course, is what keeps us awake at night is when we know that people are in such a dire situation that some of them might be dying, and we haven't done all what we can to really try to save lives and alleviate suffering. So that's a major driver that keeps us awake at night. And the other one, especially as we work in 100 armed conflicts and we have many staff working on the front line as frontline responder, I must tell you that sometimes what keeps me awake at night is also making sure that all our staff are safe in sometimes very difficult situations.
Thank you.
Yeah, for me is that how can I change the livelihood of the people that we serve to a better livelihood? How can we improve the quality of life for the people? And as an executive director of UN Habitat, I always question myself, what did I do? What did I achieve? How can I move the needle to make the very basic, for example, like people have the most vulnerable population, people have no water to drink, drinkable water. How can I make a difference? I think then so that they can look at me and smile that, yes, Maimunah, I have a water. These very basic services, especially in Africa and also in Asia, where is the urbanizing rate is very, very fast. So how can I make a difference so that how can I make people smile back to me and give hope to them? I've always think about that.
And it's sometimes just as simple as clean water, which everyone should have a right to have.
Yes. Yes.
This, I call this hereby declare that this was the best panel at WGS. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And Khalas, we all go to bed now and sleep, please.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.